Imagine discovering that the person you believe yourself to be is only a small fragment of your true self. What if everything you think you know about your identity, your desires, and your purpose is merely a mask hiding a much deeper truth? This is exactly what Carl Jung proposed in his exploration of the unconscious mind, human behavior, and the hidden forces that shape who we are. He believed that beneath the surface of our everyday selves lies a complex, powerful psyche with untapped potential. Through his groundbreaking theories on the shadow, the anima, and the process of individuation, Jung uncovered a path to self-realization, a journey that could transform not only our understanding of who we are, but also how we relate to the world around us. So, what if you're not who you think you are? What if your true self is waiting to be discovered, free from the illusions we've built over time? Let's dive deep into Carl Jung's powerful theories and uncover the mysteries of human behavior that could change everything you thought you knew about yourself. In our everyday lives, we tend to think of ourselves in very fixed terms. Our name, our roles, our desires, and our characteristics form what we believe is the real us. However, Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists, believed that this sense of self is an illusion, a mere fragment of a much larger and more complex reality. According to Jung, what we see as our true identity is actually only the tip of the iceberg, obscured by layers of unconscious influences, past experiences, and hidden drives. Our conscious sense of who we are often masks the deeper forces that shape our behavior, thoughts, and actions. Jung believed that we are much more than the identities we create for ourselves. The image we project to the world and the internal sense of who we think we are is only a small piece of a far more complex puzzle. This limited understanding is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's an incomplete one. We often live in a state of identification with the ego, the part of us that is aware of the world and conscious of our existence. However, this self-image is constructed by a combination of societal expectations, cultural norms, and personal experiences. It is a mask we wear to function in society. The concept of the illusion of the self suggests that the ego, which is usually associated with the conscious mind, distorts the way we perceive ourselves. We create stories and labels about who we are based on how we feel about our past experiences, but these stories are often influenced by an unconscious mind that contains hidden truths, repressed memories, and forgotten parts of ourselves. Jung argued that these unconscious elements must be recognized if we are ever to understand who we truly are. We are not simply the image we present to the world. We are a dynamic and evolving combination of the conscious and unconscious mind, both of which interact in ways that shape our behavior in ways we might not even be aware of. This idea of the self as an illusion might be difficult to grasp because we naturally cling to the identities we construct. These identities offer us comfort, security, and a sense of predictability. But Jung suggested that by identifying too rigidly with our ego, the version of ourselves we consciously know, we block access to the full depth of our psyche. This creates a gap between the conscious and unconscious mind, one that Jung called the persona, the mask we wear, and the shadow, the hidden, repressed aspects of ourselves. The shadow, as Jung explained, consists of those aspects of our personality that we deny or reject because they don't fit within the image of ourselves that we want to maintain. These are the traits, desires, and impulses that we push out of our conscious awareness because they are either uncomfortable or don't align with how we want to be seen by others. But Jung believed that this shadow side of our personality is just as much a part of who we are as the good qualities we embrace. Denying or ignoring it doesn't make it go away, it just hides it deeper within our unconscious, where it can still exert its influence over us. Jung argued that the key to understanding who we truly are lies in recognizing and integrating these unconscious elements, starting with the shadow. By doing so, we begin to confront the illusion of the self and move toward a more authentic understanding of who we are at our core. Only when we acknowledge that we are more than the roles and identities we create can we begin the process of self-discovery. In essence, the illusion of the self is the idea that the person you think you are is not the full story. What we identify as me is often a construction, an amalgamation of the ego, societal conditioning, and unconscious drives. To truly know ourselves, we must look beyond this superficial self-image and explore the deeper, unconscious layers of our psyche. Jung believed that by doing so, we would experience a kind of psychological wholeness, or individuation, where all parts of the self are integrated and brought into conscious awareness. Only then can we transcend the illusion and discover the true depths of our identity. Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical psychology. He is widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in psychology, with his work continuing to inspire contemporary psychology, philosophy, and even art. What made Jung's approach unique was his focus not only on the individual psyche, but also on the collective shared aspects of human experience. Unlike his contemporaries such as Sigmund Freud, Jung did not limit his studies to the individual's personal unconscious. Instead, he expanded the concept to include the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the psyche shared by all humans, containing universal symbols and themes that reflect our common humanity. Jung's interest in the human mind and behavior went beyond just treating mental illness. He wanted to understand the very essence of what it means to be human. His exploration into the unconscious mind, dreams, archetypes, and symbols led him to profound insights about how our inner world shapes our outer reality. Jung believed that our consciousness was just a small part of our full psychological makeup. To fully understand who we are, he argued, we need to explore not just what is conscious, but also the vast realm of the unconscious mind. Jung's interest in the unconscious led him to develop the concept of the collective unconscious, which differs from the personal unconscious that Freud described. While the personal unconscious consists of forgotten memories and repressed experiences unique to each person, the collective unconscious contains universal experiences shared by all human beings. These experiences are represented by archetypes, primordial images and symbols that appear across cultures, religions, myths, and even in our dreams. Jung believed that these archetypes, such as the hero, the mother, and the shadow, are embedded deep within our psyche and shape our behavior in ways we may not consciously understand. Jung's theories were also grounded in the idea of the psyche as a dynamic, evolving system. He introduced the concept of individuation, which is the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche to achieve psychological wholeness. This process of individuation, according to Jung, allows individuals to uncover their true selves by embracing and reconciling the hidden aspects of their personality, such as the shadow, and moving beyond the illusions of the ego and persona. One of Jung's most significant contributions was his exploration of human behavior through the lens of symbols and myths. He believed that the images and symbols that appear in our dreams and cultural expressions are not random but deeply significant, representing unconscious truths and psychological processes. Jung was fascinated by how symbols and myths from ancient cultures mirrored the internal struggles and desires of the individual. This led him to a profound understanding of the human psyche, showing that we are not just individuals with personal histories, but part of a larger universal psychological experience. Jung's focus on spirituality also set him apart from many other psychologists of his time. While Freud often dismissed religion as a form of neurosis, Jung saw spirituality as an essential part of the human experience. He believed that religion and spiritual practices served as important ways for individuals to connect with their deeper selves and to find meaning in their lives. Jung's own spiritual journey, which included an exploration of his own unconscious through what he called active imagination, profoundly shaped his work and his understanding of the psyche. Carl Jung's ideas about the human mind and behavior were revolutionary because they placed an emphasis on understanding the full complexity of the self. He rejected simplistic, reductionist views of human nature and instead proposed that we are multifaceted beings with layers of consciousness and unconsciousness, each influencing the other. Through his exploration of the unconscious, archetypes, and the process of individuation, Jung encouraged us to think of ourselves as more than just the roles we play or the identities we construct. He showed us that to truly understand who we are, we must dive deep into our own unconscious and accept the hidden, often contradictory parts of ourselves. Today, Carl Jung's work remains incredibly relevant, not just in psychology but in a wide array of disciplines. His theories on the unconscious, symbols, and the collective psyche continue to influence modern psychology, personal growth, and even creative fields like art and literature. Jung's legacy lives on as we continue to explore the depths of the human psyche and seek to understand the mystery of who we truly are. Carl Jung's concept of the ego is central to understanding his theories about the human psyche. In Jungian psychology, the ego is not just the superficial personality we present to the world, but the core aspect of our conscious awareness, the part of the mind that deals with our thoughts, perceptions, and decisions. It is essentially the I that we identify with in our everyday lives. The ego is the seat of our conscious identity, our self-image, and our ability to interact with the external world in a logical, organized manner. It is how we see ourselves and how we navigate the world based on our memories, experiences, and societal roles. However, for Jung, the ego was just one part of a much larger, more complex psyche. While the ego represents our conscious mind, the unconscious mind, according to Jung, has a far greater influence on our behavior and identity than we realize. Jung described the ego as the center of consciousness, but he cautioned that it should not be mistaken for the entire self. The ego, while necessary for daily functioning and making decisions, is limited and partial. It does not have full access to the deeper layers of the psyche, and therefore it cannot provide a complete understanding of who we truly are. Jung believed that the ego develops over time, shaped by our personal experiences, culture, and environment. It is through the ego that we establish a sense of individuality and identity. It is what allows us to make sense of the world, interpret events, and relate to others. Yet, despite its importance, Jung argued that the ego has a tendency to become overly identified with itself, leading to what he called ego inflation. When this happens, we become overly attached to our self-image, convinced that the way we see ourselves is the ultimate truth. This inflated ego can lead to rigidity, defensiveness, and a lack of self-awareness. Jung emphasized that the ego's primary function is to maintain the stability of our conscious personality, which is why it can be resistant to change. The ego holds on to familiar beliefs and patterns because they provide comfort and security. However, this attachment to the ego can become problematic when it prevents us from growing or understanding the deeper aspects of ourselves. According to Jung, the ego must be willing to relinquish some control in order to allow other parts of the psyche, especially the unconscious, to come to the forefront. The ego also plays a key role in the construction of the persona, which is the mask we wear in society to conform to social norms and expectations. The persona is a representation of the self that we present to the world, and while it is essential for social functioning, it can also be deceptive. The persona is not our true self, but rather a role we adopt to fit into societal frameworks. The ego, in its desire for acceptance and recognition, tends to identify with the persona, further distancing us from our true nature. Jung believed that the ego must engage in a process of self-reflection and self-awareness in order to integrate the unconscious elements of the psyche. This process, known as individuation, involves the ego becoming more attuned to the deeper layers of the unconscious mind, such as the shadow and the archetypes that lie within. Through individuation, the ego learns to balance its desire for control with an openness to the unknown and the unconscious. By acknowledging and integrating these hidden aspects of the psyche, the ego can become more flexible and aligned with the true self. The ego, according to Jung, is also inherently connected to the larger collective unconscious. While the ego represents the individual's conscious awareness, the unconscious mind houses universal symbols, myths, and archetypes shared by all humans. Jung believed that the ego often remains unaware of these unconscious influences, which is why we may find ourselves drawn to certain symbols, myths, or patterns without fully understanding why. For instance, an individual may feel a deep connection to a particular archetype, such as the hero or the wise old man, without realizing that these archetypes are part of the collective unconscious. To summarize, the ego is essential for maintaining our conscious sense of identity and our ability to function in the world. However, Jung cautioned that the ego is only one aspect of the self and that it is limited in its understanding of who we truly are. The ego can easily become inflated and overly attached to its own self-image, leading to a false sense of security and identity. To move beyond the confines of the ego, Jung suggested that we must engage in self-reflection and embrace the unconscious aspects of the psyche, allowing for a more complete and integrated understanding of our true selves. Only by doing so can we transcend the illusions created by the ego and begin the journey toward individuation, becoming the fullest version of who we are meant to be. One of Carl Jung's most intriguing and powerful concepts is the shadow. The shadow represents the unconscious part of our personality that contains all the aspects of ourselves that we reject, deny, or fail to acknowledge. These are the parts of our psyche that do not fit with our conscious self-image, the version of ourselves that we want the world to see. The shadow often includes traits, behaviors, or desires that we consider undesirable, immoral, or uncomfortable, such as anger, jealousy, selfishness, or even feelings of vulnerability or fear. Because we are socialized to present a polished, socially acceptable version of ourselves, we tend to push these qualities into the depths of our unconscious, where they remain hidden but continue to exert influence over our thoughts, actions, and emotions. Jung believed that the shadow is not inherently evil or negative. It is simply the repressed or neglected aspects of our psyche, which may hold both destructive tendencies but also untapped potential for growth, creativity, and insight. The key to understanding the shadow is realizing that it is not something to be feared or rejected, but something to be embraced and integrated. Jung argued that the more we suppress or deny these aspects, the more power they have over us. When we are unaware of our shadow, it can manifest in destructive ways, causing us to act out unconsciously or project these unwanted traits onto others. For instance, we may find ourselves blaming others for qualities we dislike in ourselves, or we may have sudden outbursts of anger or frustration that seem out of place. The process of bringing the shadow into consciousness, acknowledging and accepting these hidden parts of ourselves, is crucial for personal growth and self-awareness. Jung called this process shadow integration. Rather than seeing the shadow as something that makes us less than perfect, we can view it as an essential part of our whole being, one that holds the keys to greater self-understanding and authenticity. In other words, embracing the shadow is not about indulging in negative behavior, but about accepting that these traits exist within us and learning how to work with them constructively. The integration of the shadow requires confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It involves taking responsibility for the traits and behaviors we would rather not acknowledge, and understanding how they may have shaped our actions, relationships, and choices. This confrontation can be painful, as it requires vulnerability and honesty. However, it is through this difficult process that we can begin to achieve a greater sense of wholeness and psychological balance. When we accept our shadow, we no longer have to hide from parts of ourselves, and we are less likely to project our unresolved issues onto others. Jung also suggested that the shadow is not just an individual phenomenon, but a collective one. The shadow exists not only within each person, but also within societies and cultures. As individuals, we tend to project our own personal shadows onto others or onto groups that we perceive as different or threatening. Similarly, societies may suppress certain qualities, such as vulnerability or aggression, and then project them onto marginalized groups or individuals. Jung believed that the collective shadow plays a significant role in shaping the dynamics of societies, often leading to conflict, prejudice, and violence. By becoming aware of the collective shadow, we can begin to address and heal the divisions and tensions that exist between groups, as well as within ourselves. In dreams, the shadow often appears in symbolic forms, such as an unknown figure, a monster, or an enemy. Jung believed that these dream symbols are a direct reflection of the unconscious mind's attempt to bring repressed aspects of the psyche into awareness. For example, if someone dreams of being chased by a shadowy figure, this could symbolize a part of themselves they are avoiding or repressing. Rather than running from these dreams or dismissing them as meaningless, Jung encouraged individuals to explore the deeper meaning behind these symbols and understand what aspect of the self they might represent. Through the process of integrating the shadow, we move closer to what Jung called individuation, the journey toward self-realization and wholeness. By accepting and integrating all parts of our personality, including the hidden or repressed aspects, we become more authentic, resilient, and psychologically mature. The shadow is not something that can be fully eliminated. Rather, it is something we must learn to live with, understand, and even use to our advantage. It is a constant presence in the psyche, and our relationship with it is ongoing. But by acknowledging the shadow, we transform it from a source of unconscious fear and projection into a source of strength, creativity, and deeper understanding. Carl Jung's exploration of the unconscious mind was groundbreaking in psychology, as he proposed that it is far more than just a reservoir of forgotten memories and suppressed desires, as Sigmund Freud had suggested. For Jung, the unconscious was a vast, complex realm that significantly influences who we are and how we behave. He distinguished between two key aspects of the unconscious: the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious, as the name suggests, is unique to each individual. It consists of repressed memories, forgotten experiences, and emotions that have been pushed out of conscious awareness because they are too painful, embarrassing, or difficult to process. These aspects of the unconscious shape our reactions and behaviors in subtle and often unnoticed ways. For instance, Unresolved childhood trauma might manifest as a fear of authority figures, or a past rejection might lead to difficulties in trusting others. The personal unconscious holds the keys to many of our emotional patterns, which often operate outside of our conscious awareness. While the personal unconscious is important in understanding our individual experiences and behaviors, Jung's concept of the collective unconscious is perhaps his most revolutionary idea. Jung proposed that beyond the personal unconscious, there is a deeper layer of the psyche that is shared by all human beings, regardless of culture, time, or place. This collective unconscious contains universal patterns of thought, behavior, and emotion that are inherited from our ancestors and shared across generations. These inherited structures are known as archetypes, which Jung defined as universal symbols, themes, and motifs that appear in myths, dreams, religious traditions, and cultural narratives. Archetypes such as the hero, the shadow, the anima, animus, and the wise old man are deeply ingrained in the human psyche. They are not learned through personal experience but are inherited as part of our evolutionary history. Jung believed that these archetypes shape how we perceive and relate to the world, often without our conscious awareness. For example, the hero archetype may drive us to seek adventure, face challenges, or pursue personal growth, while the shadow archetype may prompt us to confront aspects of ourselves that we reject or fear. These archetypes are not fixed or rigid, they are fluid and adaptable, manifesting in various forms depending on an individual's life experiences and cultural background. The unconscious mind, therefore, is not a mere passive repository of repressed material, but an active and dynamic force that shapes our behavior and worldview. Jung suggested that much of what we experience in life, our dreams, desires, fears, and actions, are influenced by unconscious forces that we may not fully understand or recognize. These unconscious influences are not inherently bad or troubling. In fact, they can serve as powerful tools for personal growth and self-realization. By tapping into the unconscious, we can uncover hidden truths about ourselves, confront our repressed desires, and gain insight into the deeper motivations behind our actions. Jung's view of the unconscious challenges the conventional idea that consciousness is the sole determinant of who we are. He proposed that our conscious mind is only a small part of our total psychological makeup, and that the unconscious mind plays a far more significant role in shaping our experiences and identities. This understanding opens up new possibilities for self-awareness and personal transformation. Rather than being a passive observer of life, the conscious mind can actively engage with the unconscious to bring hidden aspects of the self into awareness and integrate them into the larger picture of who we are. The unconscious also plays a crucial role in the process of individuation, Jung's concept of psychological development and self-realization. Individuation is the process by which we become whole, integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of our psyche. It involves confronting the parts of ourselves that we have rejected or failed to acknowledge, such as the shadow, and recognizing the archetypal forces that shape our thoughts and behaviors. As we become more aware of the unconscious influences in our lives, we gain the ability to make more conscious choices, free from the automatic patterns of the past. Jung believed that dreams were one of the primary ways in which the unconscious communicates with the conscious mind. Dreams, for Jung, are not just random images or meaningless occurrences. They are symbolic representations of unconscious material that seeks to be integrated into the waking life. Through dream analysis, individuals can uncover hidden desires, unresolved conflicts, and deeper truths about themselves. In this way, the unconscious provides valuable guidance on the path of individuation, offering insight into areas of our life. One of Carl Jung's most influential contributions to psychology was his theory of archetypes, which are universal symbols or patterns of behavior that are ingrained in the collective unconscious. Jung believed that these archetypes are not learned through personal experience, but are inherited, shared across all human beings, and exist in the deepest layers of our psyche. They are the fundamental building blocks of the human experience and influence how we perceive the world, relate to others, and understand ourselves. Archetypes, according to Jung, are timeless and universal. They appear in myths, dreams, religious traditions, art, and cultural narratives throughout human history, regardless of culture, time period, or geographical location. These symbols represent core human experiences, values, and drives that transcend individual differences. Jung viewed them as innate psychic structures deeply embedded in the unconscious that shape the way we view reality and interact with the world. While archetypes may manifest in different forms depending on cultural and personal factors, Jung identified several key archetypes that appear across all cultures. Some of the most prominent archetypes include 1. The hero. The hero represents the individual's quest for growth, transformation, and self-actualization. This archetype is often associated with courage, determination, and the overcoming of obstacles. Heroes embark on journeys, face trials, and often encounter moments of crisis or conflict. The hero archetype can be seen in countless mythological figures such as Hercules, King Arthur, or even in modern-day heroes like superheroes or influential leaders. On a personal level, the hero archetype is reflected in our drive to achieve personal goals and face our own internal struggles. 2. The shadow. The shadow represents the darker, hidden aspects of our personality, such as repressed desires, fears, and traits that we deny or reject. It embodies the parts of ourselves that we are often uncomfortable with or unwilling to acknowledge. The shadow is not inherently bad. Rather, it consists of all the qualities that we push out of conscious awareness. By integrating the shadow, we gain access to a fuller understanding of who we are, including both our strengths and weaknesses. This archetype is crucial for personal growth as it challenges us to confront the aspects of ourselves that we may have ignored or repressed. 3. The Anima Animus. The Anima and Animus represent the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects within each individual. For men, the anima is the feminine counterpart that resides in the unconscious, while for women, the animus is the masculine counterpart. These archetypes reflect the inner opposite gender within each person, influencing how we relate to others and our own understanding of masculinity or femininity. The anima and animus also play a key role in relationships, as they can shape how we perceive and interact with the opposite sex and influence our experiences of love, attraction, and emotional connection. 4. The wise old man, woman. This archetype represents wisdom, guidance, and insight. The wise old man, or woman, embodies the archetype of the mentor, the guide who helps the hero navigate their journey. In mythology, figures like Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings or Yoda in Star Wars embody this archetype. On a psychological level, the wise old man represents our capacity for wisdom, inner knowing, and the potential for spiritual or intellectual growth. The archetype encourages us to seek out and embrace guidance from within or from others, particularly during moments of uncertainty or transformation. 5. The mother. The mother archetype symbolizes nurturing, care, and protection. It represents the primal, life-giving force that is associated with creation, sustenance, and emotional support. This archetype is often seen in figures like the Virgin Mary, Gaia, or the Earth itself. The mother archetype influences how we perceive our own nurturing qualities, how we care for others, and how we relate to concepts of security and love. It also plays a significant role in our relationships with our own biological or symbolic mothers and shapes our understanding of what it means to be loved and cared for. 6. The trickster. The trickster archetype is characterized by mischief, disruption, and humor. The trickster is a shapeshifter who challenges societal norms, creates chaos, and often teaches important lessons through unconventional means. Trickster figures such as Loki from Norse mythology, Hermes from Greek mythology, or even the Joker in modern pop culture are embodiments of this archetype. On a psychological level, the trickster represents the rebellious, free-spirited side of the self, encouraging us to embrace playfulness, humor, and the breaking of boundaries. The trickster is essential for breaking down rigid structures and opening up new possibilities for growth. Individuation is one of Carl Jung's most profound and transformative concepts in his psychological theory. It refers to the process of becoming the person you are inherently meant to be, integrating all parts of your psyche, both conscious and unconscious, into a unified whole. Unlike other models of development that focus solely on social conformity or external achievements, individuation is about self-realization and inner harmony. It is an ongoing journey of understanding and actualizing the self, where you integrate your various inner aspects, including the shadow, anima, animus, ego, and archetypes, into your conscious awareness. For Jung, individuation is the process by which we move away from being purely defined by external societal roles and begin to embrace and express our true, authentic self. It involves reconciling the dualities within us, such as light and dark, masculine and feminine, or rational and irrational, and recognizing that all aspects of our psyche are integral to our wholeness. It is a lifelong journey of self-discovery, personal growth, and transformation. The goal of individuation is not to become perfect or without flaws, but to become more aware of and connected to the entirety of our being, acknowledging both our strengths and weaknesses. In this process, the individual stops seeing themselves as merely a collection of external roles, such as son, daughter, employee, etc., and starts to recognize a deeper, more holistic sense of self that is not reliant on societal expectations or external validation. It is through this deep internal process that the individual experiences the freedom to live authentically and with greater meaning. The role of the unconscious. At the core of individuation lies the integration of the unconscious mind into the conscious self. Jung believed that the unconscious is a vast, mysterious reservoir of unacknowledged emotions, desires, and experiences. This includes the personal unconscious, which contains repressed memories and unresolved issues, as well as the collective unconscious, which houses universal archetypes and symbols shared by all humans. The unconscious mind influences our behavior in profound ways. However, many of us live with only limited access to this deeper aspect of the psyche. Throughout the process of individuation, the individual becomes increasingly aware of the unconscious forces shaping their thoughts and actions. This is where the shadow, those repressed or denied aspects of the self, comes into play. Confronting and integrating the shadow is a critical part of individuation. By acknowledging the parts of ourselves that we have hidden or ignored, we are able to bring them into the light, allowing for greater self-acceptance and psychological wholeness. Individuation is not merely a cognitive understanding, but an experiential one. It involves coming to terms with repressed emotions, unresolved conflicts, and unrecognized desires. Through this emotional and psychological work, we become more aware of how the unconscious is guiding and influencing our decisions, often in ways we are not consciously aware of. The importance of archetypes in individuation. Archetypes play a crucial role in the individuation process. As symbols of universal human experiences and traits, they serve as guides that help us navigate the journey towards self-realization. For example, the hero archetype can represent our desire to overcome challenges and achieve personal growth, while the wise old man or woman can provide us with guidance and wisdom, helping us make informed, conscious decisions. One of the most significant archetypes involved in individuation is the self. Jung saw the self as the central organizing principle of the psyche, representing the totality of the individual. It is not the ego or any one aspect of the personality, but the whole integrated person that encompasses all conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. The self is the final goal of individuation, where the conscious ego becomes aware of the deeper unconscious processes, and the individual experiences a harmonious balance of all parts of the psyche. In the individuation process, individuals often encounter symbolic representations of these archetypes in their dreams, creative expressions, and life experiences. For example, someone may dream of being in a heroic battle or interacting with a wise elder. These dreams reflect the individual's inner journey toward integrating different aspects of themselves and moving closer to the self. Challenges of individuation. While individuation is a powerful and transformative process, it is not without its challenges. Confronting the unconscious, particularly the shadow, can be a difficult and painful experience. Many people resist the work required in individuation because it involves letting go of familiar identities and confronting aspects of themselves they have long avoided. One of Carl Jung's most powerful and thought-provoking ideas is the concept of the shadow, which represents the unconscious, repressed, or denied parts of the self. These are the aspects of our personality that we often hide from others, and sometimes even from ourselves, because they are uncomfortable, unacceptable, or deemed undesirable by our conscious mind. The shadow is not inherently bad or evil. Rather, it consists of the traits, behaviors, and impulses that we have been socialized to repress or avoid. The shadow is often formed early in life when we begin to internalize societal rules, family expectations, and cultural norms. As we grow, we learn what is considered acceptable behavior and what is not. We may repress qualities such as anger, jealousy, selfishness, or weakness because they conflict with our idealized self-image or social expectations. However, this does not mean that these qualities disappear. They are simply pushed into the unconscious, where they continue to influence our behavior in subtle and often unconscious ways. Jung believed that the shadow is an essential part of our psyche, and its presence is inevitable. It is not something that can be eliminated or avoided. In fact, attempting to ignore or suppress the shadow can lead to emotional imbalance, psychological distress, and unhealthy patterns of behavior. The more we repress or deny these aspects of ourselves, the more power the shadow exerts over us, influencing our actions, relationships, and decisions without our conscious awareness. The importance of confronting the shadow. One of the core principles of Jungian psychology is that in order to achieve true self-understanding and psychological wholeness, we must confront and integrate the shadow. Jung referred to this process as shadow work. This involves becoming aware of the aspects of ourselves that we have rejected or denied, and bringing them into conscious awareness. By doing so, we can learn to accept these traits as part of who we are and incorporate them into our overall sense of self. The shadow is not necessarily a source of negativity or destructiveness. It is often a repository of untapped potential, creativity, and power. For example, the repressed anger in the shadow can, when acknowledged and channeled appropriately, become a source of strength and assertiveness. Similarly, The parts of ourselves that we see as weak or vulnerable can also offer opportunities for growth, empathy, and connection. Embracing the shadow allows us to reclaim these aspects of ourselves and use them constructively, rather than allowing them to control us from the unconscious. The shadow often appears in our dreams, fantasies, and projections. Jung believed that dreams are a primary means through which the unconscious communicates with the conscious mind, and the shadow frequently emerges in dream imagery. For instance, if you dream of a dark figure or a threatening force, it may symbolize an aspect of your shadow, perhaps a part of yourself that you have been avoiding or denying. Similarly, when we project our negative qualities onto others, we are often externalizing our shadow. We might criticize someone else for being arrogant or selfish, when in fact these qualities reflect something we have not accepted within ourselves. The shadow in relationships. The shadow has a significant impact on our relationships with others. When we are not aware of our shadow, we are more likely to project it onto the people around us. For example, we may criticize someone for being too controlling or manipulative, while failing to recognize that these very traits exist within us, albeit in a less obvious or socially acceptable form. This projection can lead to misunderstandings, conflict, and emotional distance in relationships. On a deeper level, relationships often serve as mirrors that reflect our shadow. The people we are drawn to or repel can be indicators of qualities within ourselves that we have yet to confront. For example, someone who has difficulty expressing anger might attract a partner who is overtly confrontational, creating a dynamic where the repressed anger is externalized. Alternatively, someone who has rejected their own vulnerability might find themselves in a relationship with a person who appears overly needy or dependent. To truly heal and grow in relationships, we must be willing to look inward and examine the parts of ourselves that we have disowned. By recognizing our projections and taking responsibility for the shadow aspects that we see in others, we can begin to heal old wounds, transform negative patterns, and create more authentic, fulfilling connections. Shadow and creativity. The shadow is not only a source of hidden emotions or repressed desires, it is also a wellspring of creativity and personal power. Many artists, writers, musicians, and creators draw from their shadow to produce some of their most profound work. Carl Jung's concepts of the anima and animus represent the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects within each individual, regardless of their biological sex. The anima is the feminine archetype present in the unconscious mind of men, while the animus is the masculine archetype present in the unconscious mind of women. Jung believed that both of these inner figures play a crucial role in shaping an individual's psyche, relationships, and sense of identity. The anima and animus are not simply reflections of biological gender or societal roles. Instead, they represent the deeper psychological energies and qualities that are universally associated with masculinity and femininity. These archetypes are a manifestation of the collective unconscious, which is shared by all human beings and contains universal patterns and symbols that transcend individual and cultural differences. Jung argued that the integration of the anima and animus is essential for achieving psychological wholeness and individuation. The process of individuation involves integrating all aspects of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious, into a harmonious whole. And this includes reconciling the inner feminine and masculine elements within ourselves. By recognizing and embracing these archetypes, individuals can achieve a more balanced and complete sense of self, free from rigid gender stereotypes and societal expectations. The anima, the feminine principle within the male psyche. In men, the anima represents the inner feminine aspects of their psyche. It is often portrayed as a series of images or archetypes in dreams, fantasies, and mythological figures such as the goddess, the maiden, or the mother. The anima is not just an expression of femininity in a literal sense, but rather an embodiment of the qualities traditionally associated with femininity, such as intuition, emotional depth, nurturing, and creativity. Jung believed that the anima acts as a bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious. Through the anima, men can connect to their emotional world, developing a deeper understanding of their feelings, desires, and relationships. Without the influence of the anima, men may struggle to access their emotional intelligence or may repress their feelings, leading to emotional detachment or a lack of empathy. In this sense, the anima is crucial for emotional balance and personal growth in men. The anima appears in many forms depending on the stage of a man's life and his level of psychological development. In the early stages, the anima may manifest as an innocent, youthful figure, representing unfulfilled potential and emotional vulnerability. As the man matures, the anima may take on more complex and powerful forms, such as the wise woman or the seductress, symbolizing the integration of deeper aspects of the feminine. Jung also believed that the anima could influence a man's relationships with women. If a man has not integrated his anima, he may project unrealistic expectations onto women, idealizing them or seeing them as objects of fantasy. This can lead to difficulties in romantic relationships, as the man may be unable to relate to women as fully realized individuals, instead of projecting his unconscious fantasies onto them. To develop healthier, more authentic relationships, men must recognize and integrate their anima, allowing them to relate to women with greater empathy, understanding, and emotional depth. The animus, the masculine principle within the female psyche. The animus, in contrast, represents the inner masculine aspects of a woman's psyche. It is often associated with qualities such as logic, reason, assertiveness, and strength, traits that have traditionally been linked to masculinity in many cultures. Similar to the anima, the animus is not simply a reflection of biological gender, but a psychological energy that embodies the masculine principle within the feminine psyche. In women, the animus plays a critical role in how they relate to their own power, authority, and sense of self, while the anima helps men connect to their emotional and intuitive sides. The animus helps women access their intellectual and assertive energies. Jung believed that without the influence of the animus, women might struggle with issues of self-assertion, confidence, and independence. The animus empowers women to engage with the world more fully, assert their boundaries, and express their creative potential. The animus also appears in various forms, typically representing different stages of a woman's psychological development. In the early stages of life, the animus may manifest as an abstract or intellectual figure, such as a wise teacher or a strong male authority figure. As the woman matures and integrates more complex aspects of herself, the animus may take on more dynamic forms, such as the hero, the warrior, or even the lover. These figures represent the integration of strength, independence, and assertiveness. At the heart of Carl Jung's entire psychological framework lies the concept of individuation, a process of personal transformation and self-realization that leads to the integration of the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. For Jung, individuation is the journey toward becoming the fullest version of oneself, a state in which an individual is in touch with both their conscious self and the deep, often hidden forces that shape their unconscious mind. Individuation is not a fixed destination, but an ongoing dynamic process that unfolds throughout a person's life. It involves the reconciliation of opposites within the self, such as the light and shadow, the masculine and feminine, and the rational and emotional. In essence, it is the integration of all the fragmented parts of the self into a unified whole, transcending the limitations of the ego and accessing a deeper, more authentic experience of life. For Jung, the process of individuation was not only about developing a balanced and integrated self, but also about achieving greater spiritual wholeness. By becoming aware of and accepting the unconscious aspects of the psyche, individuals can tap into their higher self, often referred to as the self, with a capital S in Jungian terms, which represents the totality of the personality, both conscious and unconscious. The role of the ego in individuation. The ego in Jungian psychology is the conscious part of the psyche that we identify with on a daily basis. It represents our self-image, our sense of personal identity, and the aspects of our personality that we are fully aware of. However, the ego is not the entirety of who we are. It is only one part of a much larger and deeper psyche. The process of individuation involves recognizing that the ego is not the totality of the self, but only a limited aspect of it. Jung argued that the ego often operates under the illusion that it is the central organizing principle of the psyche. This can lead to a sense of separateness, isolation, and a narrow view of who we are. As part of the individuation process, individuals must recognize that the ego is just one aspect of the larger psyche, and they must open themselves to the influences of the unconscious. By doing so, they can overcome the fragmentation that results from living solely in the realm of the ego and begin the journey of integrating the unconscious into their conscious experience. The confrontation with the unconscious. A central aspect of individuation is the confrontation with the unconscious. Jung believed that the unconscious mind contains a wealth of hidden knowledge, repressed memories, and untapped potential. These unconscious aspects of the self often manifest as symbols, images, dreams, and archetypes, which may initially seem foreign or difficult to understand. However, Jung also believed that these unconscious elements are not to be feared but embraced. The unconscious is not a dark, chaotic force, as some have believed, but rather a source of wisdom and guidance. In fact, it is through engaging with the unconscious that individuals can discover deeper truths about themselves, unlocking their full potential and gaining access to their inner wisdom. The process of confronting the unconscious often involves working with symbols, dreams, and other forms of inner expression. For example, dreams are seen as a vital means through which the unconscious communicates with the conscious mind. Jung emphasized the importance of paying attention to the content of dreams, as they often contain messages that reveal hidden aspects of the self, offering valuable insights into unconscious desires, conflicts, and desires for growth. The role of archetypes in individuation. Jung believed that archetypes are universal patterns or symbols that reside in the collective unconscious, shared by all human beings across cultures and time periods. Archetypes are the fundamental building blocks of the human experience and shape the way we perceive the world and ourselves. In the process of individuation, individuals encounter and integrate these archetypes, which often appear in dreams, myths, and even personal experiences. Some common archetypes include the hero, the shadow, the anima, animus, the wise old man, woman, and the self. Each archetype represents a different aspect of the human experience, and by encountering these archetypes within the unconscious, individuals can better understand the forces that shape their lives. For instance, encountering the hero archetype in dreams or life experiences may signify a call to action or the need to overcome personal challenges. Similarly, confronting the shadow archetype helps individuals recognize and integrate their repressed or denied qualities. By understanding and integrating these archetypes, individuals can gain a deeper understanding of themselves and their personal journey. Archetypes serve as guides on the path of individuation, offering wisdom,